Well, howdy ho, good neighbor. Today, we're flying high over Berkeley Aquatic Park. That's right, this is probably my third trip out here to document this huge construction project. As you can see, they got some concrete poured and the slab is down. So now it's time to erect a big steel building out here in Berkeley on this overcast day, I would say. But there is the huge crane by Biggie, B-I-G-G-E. I think that's how they say Biggie Crane Company. Or maybe it's just Big. I don't know, but I call them Biggie because most all their cranes are Biggie. So they really don't mess around putting up this steel. Seems like if you blink an eye, a building goes up. But I'm sure if you're working on it, it's slow, but they really don't mess around putting up the steel. It seems like the steel portion of the building goes up fast, and the rest of the building, all the mechanical and duct work and fire sprinklers and electrical work, that takes a while. So just because they're fast doesn't mean the building goes up fast. And as you can see, there is not a lot of room here in Berkeley to build, so for them to get this amount of square footage here in Berkeley is pretty astounding to me. I used to have a building I used to do the annuals and 5-year inspections, and that building is no longer there, but just like they say, what is old will be torn down, and what is new, well, that'll be up for a little while. I think that's what they say. But there is a good example. I want to say this building's probably about a little over halfway erected. So there's a guy on the ground that his job is to figure out what is the next piece of steel that's going to go up. So basically is a giant jigsaw puzzle of steel going up and steel coming down. So you always see the trucks driving down the road with a whole bunch of steel on them. Well, as soon as they get to the job site, they got to figure out which part of this building does that steel go into. So I'm sure it is a logistical nightmare to figure out what trucks show up on which days. Because I don't think you would want a whole bunch of steel just laying around with room that's not available. So that guy on the forklift, that is his job, to move steel around all day long and figure out where it goes. And I'm sure that's his helper, wondering about the next piece. So he's talking to that forklift driver saying, "Hey, I can't find piece 47. So he said, "Hey, go look over here." So yeah, there is a thing that is all about, let's call it luck and no luck. But there is a good example of those guys climbing on that steel, and they are tied off. If you look at their waist, you can see that they're tied off to some kind of cabling that goes around the building. So If they do fall, they'll only fall about 6 feet before their cable catches. They're safety harnessed, as we call them. So I was trying to get a good picture of some steel going up, but it is a little nerve-wracking to be flying a drone around a construction site with so much activity. But there's a good example of his safety harness tied to the cable as he moves to the corner of the building. So that is what's happening here at the Berkeley Aquatic Park. And somebody's always running, which is not a good thing to do on the job site, but when somebody needs something, you don't really want to walk around slow. That forklift driver just brought over the next piece of metal that'll be going up here shortly. So, like I said, it is a moving around game. I'm surprised that all that slab doesn't crack with all the weight. Maybe it does. And they go in and patch it up, but you can see that the forms are up on the back end over there, and they got all the dirt all dug out for some kind of forming. So that is what you're looking at there. So not only do the steel guys have to be precise, so does the guys forming the walls. The walls have to be right at the right location. You would not want to form a wall in the wrong location, so a lot of engineers are involved. I didn't want to go all the way around the building because you're always afraid of losing radio connection with your drone. So I basically kind of stayed out of the way of that crane because it was swinging all around. You can see the guy at the bottom of the crane. He just sits there in that little cab waiting for the next piece of steel to go up. But that freeway back there, the 80 freeway, which goes all the way to Chicago and then some, well, as you get here to Berkeley and Emeryville, that freeway is just always dead stopped. But this is the next portion of steel that will be going up here, and I plan to continue to keep coming out here and filming this, because it's not every day that we get a huge project this close to home. It's not too far from Alameda. It's probably about 20-minute drive. So on this day, well, I didn't have any work on this day. It was a weekday, so this is one of the best times to film a construction site, is when there is no work on a weekday. And that means, well, you should probably get out and see these guys work. The activity always makes for good drone shots. There's the beautiful city of San Francisco, and the fog rolling in over the Golden Gate. But I am flying my drone with a little camera phone, so I didn't see a lot of activity while I was filming. I wish I would have. But I noticed when I got home, I noticed that right about here, that man is going to scale up the corner of that building. Look at him scale up, that iron worker. He's just climbing to the top of that post, right on the corner of the building. So he's waiting for his next piece of steel. So he climbs that like a monkey right up to the top. And yeah, you could fall right there and get really hurt because there is no safety lanyard. So he's climbing up to the top of that beam with all his tools. That's a lot of weight. So he took a cable up with him, so you can see he's making his next safety harness cabling. So if you're an iron worker, you cannot be afraid of heights. Look at him on the top of that beam. Of course I didn't notice him when I was flying, but I do now. I see everybody trying to get that cabling up for his own safety. And there's a big piece of metal coming down. It's funny, when they crane this stuff up, they use a couple pieces of metal to make the last piece more stable. So when you see a crane working, you'll see a couple pieces of metal and then the main piece of metal that they hang. So I think the other one's just to keep it nice and balanced. But there is the iron worker at the top of that beam is the right word, but I don't really know what this is going to be yet. I almost imagine it's going to be pharmaceuticals, because Bayer Aspirin is right next door, so I don't see that many people wanting to move into a building this big unless it's pharmaceutical drugs. Of course, with the whole world, and mainly the United States, taking prescription pills for just about everything, well, the drug companies, they have plenty of money to build something this big. You know, so there's the old alarm and telephone that it always goes off right when I'm working. So that tells me that I need to put my phone in do not disturb when I'm making these videos. I'm sure the trash truck will come next to make some more noise, but there's that old boy still on top of that metal pillar in the corner of the building, just waiting for his next piece. And the crane, well, it's getting ready to pick up its next piece. So a lot of waiting around if you're a crane operator. And those guys are putting down the metal decking. They call that hat track. So someday soon they will pour concrete all the way throughout this building. But not yet. I think they have to get all the steel up before they can pour concrete. But it looks like that iron worker has his cable tied all the way across there, so it's safe for other workers to climb up there and tie off. As I pull back on this shot, this will give you a good example of how much space this company is, or should I say, this company has taken up in real estate. They're going to have a front row seat to the aquatic park. And you can see that's where they row their boats. There's a man there rowing his boat. Good exercise, I would imagine. Not only climbing up those beams, but rowing up the boats. But I would say they probably got at least 3 blocks, maybe even 4 blocks of real estate there. And you can tell that they're about 2/3 built, and they are fast. So it looks like just that bottom part will be a pretty fast erection, because There's not much left to this building in square footage wise, but it's easy for me to say that. Well, there you go. The Berkeley Aquatic Park Big Job site. Well, as always, I'd like to thank you again for coming along with me on these no work videos. That's right, I got to see them work. But on this day, I didn't have any, so. Well, you know the drill. The drill is peace, love, and all that hippie jazz. Bye-bye, everybody.